I guess I didn't swag enough. Stupid fruity pebble chain. We bag enough. I guess I didn't swag enough. Stupid fruity pebble chain. We bag enough. Poppin' tan model BC couldn't brag 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 enough. I guess I didn't swag enough. Stupid fruity pebble chain.
And welcome once again to another episode of the HoriZone Roundtable. I am Bob McDonald, and joining me is my co-host, Jim Sarro.
Hey, Bob. I am really excited about today's episode. I'm starting to get into the nitty-gritty with people who get a lot more access to these teams than you and I do, and really starting to learn about who is going to be in the HoriZone League making moves in 25 and 26. So I can't wait to get started here today.
All right. And Jim, you can find on Twitter at Jim Sarro. You can find us on the web at HoriZoneRoundtable.com. You can find all links to all of our social sites and sites where podcasts are available at HoriZoneRoundtable.com/subscribe. Become a patron, patreon.com/HoriZoneRoundtable. This is posting on Sunday. Do it now and you can get early access to Preview Week, all the Preview Week articles, because they came out, since we're recording this on Sunday, they came out yesterday. So you can get like a day's head start on everybody by being a patron. It's $1 a month. Patreon.com/HoriZone Roundtable. And of course, you can donate to us as well as HoriZoneRoundtable.com/donate. Jim, as I mentioned, this episode is always kind of the start of Preview Week for us, except for obviously the Patreon stuff. But this is our annual media forum. So as we've done for the past couple of years, we have welcomed the voices of the play-by-play voices of various HoriZone League teams, and I'm excited to have these guys on once again. We are going to be joined. We've got right now we've got Chris Collins, who does the play-by-play for Wright State, and Dan Hasty, who does play-by-play for Detroit Mercy. Later on, we're going to be talking to Robb Schmidt, who does Youngstown State. John Nolan, who is going to be back for Purdue Fort Wayne. He had a kind of a more popular gig because he was the radio voice of the Indiana Fever this season. So we'll be talking to him and Robb and Brady Labor, who does the television play-by-play for Northern Kentucky. And then we're going to wrap everything up with Rakestraw, who of course is who does play-by-play for IU Indy. But first, I want to introduce to Chris Collins. Chris, thank you once again for joining us. Appreciate having you back on once again.
Thank you very much for having me. Looking forward to this. You guys can teach me something about the league, I think.
We might be a little late on that from what I understand, but yeah, we'll be there. So and then we also have Dan Hasty, who is from Detroit Mercy. So Dan, thank you once again for joining us as well.
Gentlemen, I did not realize I was going to have the privilege of being here with Chris Collins. And that alone makes this an award-winning podcast. Gentlemen, good to see you.
Oh, Dan, I was just going to say, you're just making me turn red. It's my pleasure to be with you guys. And I got to say this, I'm rooting for your Detroit Tigers. I really am.
There's a lot of people that are saying that, and I think that we got the feeling that was the case last year because, essentially their competitiveness skipped a generation of fans. So when your team goes away for that long and then comes back, they sort of get the cry of the nation, or at least the baseball nation, behind them. And sure enough, they went into Cleveland and they got a series win. So that was sort of them slaying their proverbial giant.
Dan, don't take this the wrong way. I'm not.
That's right.
See if you can guess why.
I like it. Well, I will say this, Dan. My 90-year-old mother, it's her birthday coming up here soon. She is a big Detroit fan. They live in Troy, Michigan. I got 2 brothers and a sister who live in Detroit also, so they're really excited.
It's an exciting time. And as you know, there are only so many things that small market teams can do.
Yeah.
And, look, Detroit is a big market in and of itself, but you're competing against the New Yorks and the Los Angeleses of the world. And, They get Cleveland, they beat Cleveland, then they get Seattle, who actually I think is a lot like Cleveland. And then, of course, you're going to run into one of those big teams at the top. But overall, I think they've clearly exceeded expectations. I think it was back in 2006 where they missed winning the division and had to settle for the wild card, and then they got hot when everybody sort of didn't have any expectations for them. So maybe we're kind of reliving 2006 again.
Dan and Bob, I'm sorry I took you down the wrong road, so let's get to the HoriZone League. I apologize.
I was going to ask, how nervous were you when they blew that 15.5 game lead? But let's move on to the HoriZone League, shall we? Now, Dan, I actually want to start with you because I know in addition to the play-by-play, you've been doing the Tighten Up podcast. And that has been kind of an interesting venture. For the uninitiated, kind of walk us through kind of what that's been, what that's about, and what you've been able to do with that podcast at this point.
Yeah, I think, now we live in this age where if you want your school to be represented, and sometimes you don't always have the means to do it, I think you just have to kind of find ways to make something happen. And you guys are great examples of this. Not a lot of people were showing the kind of passion for the HoriZone League, and then became its flagship podcast. So look, we're just trying to boil it down.
Hey, Dan, can I get that flagship podcast thing in writing?
I'm sure that wouldn't bother you one bit. Look,
No.
I think when it comes down to it, Detroit Mercy is a wonderful place with wonderful people. But, we talked about the Tigers skipping a generation of fans.
Yeah.
Well, the truth is that you could say something similar for Detroit Mercy basketball and for Detroit Mercy athletics in and of itself. So we're just simply trying to reach out to a group that doesn't necessarily have that familiarity with Detroit Mercy athletics. A lot of our fans have been coming for 30 or 40 years. They've kind of been there as long as the building has been there. So we're simply just trying to open this up to a new group of people and allow them to connect with a place and with a school that really holds Detroit in the highest regard.
Now, one of the cool things you got to do in the off season is you had Orlando Lovejoy on, and he announced on your podcast that he was coming back to Detroit Mercy. I guess my first question is, how much advance notice did you get he was going to make that announcement before he made it on your podcast?
So this is the benefit of being sponsored by the NIL Collective. So in 2025, these are the kinds of ways that we can reach out. And so we have a great relationship with the Shield. That was the NIL Collective. They still do wonderful work, even though now things have kind of geared more towards the schools themselves. But I got a text the night before saying, get ready to have Lovejoy on your show tomorrow for an announcement. And I knew that announcement was not going to be I'm leaving. So I was pretty excited about
Not on the Tighten Up podcast. That would be Tighten.
No, that would be the Tighten Down podcast. I don't know where you can find that.
Chris, we were actually talking offline about kind of your history with Wright State, and you mentioned you've been doing this since this will be what, your 29th season with Wright State. Now, we were kind of going through kind of the history of Wright State a little bit, because we were talking a little bit about back in the day when Ralph Underhill was the coach, and how I had like a small, probably he wouldn't even remember it, interaction with Jim Brown, because he took over for Ralph Underhill for like a half a season in 96, 97. And one of the things that I guess my question to you is, and I probably haven't asked this in the last couple of times I've had you on, is, over that span, what has kind of been the biggest difference? I mean, obviously NIL and the transfer portal is a big one, but is there any other kind of what other kind of differences have you seen over the course of when you started and now, as far as what you've seen across Wright State or even in the league?
Well, you brought up the two most important. That's the NIL and the transfer portal. I mean, that's been the biggest impact. However, if you look past that, I think a lot of it has to do with just the change in college basketball and in sports in general. When I first started out, and Dan, you can probably talk about this also, there's so much technology involved right now. I can do everything off my computer. And before, everything was by hand. It was difficult. We didn't get as much information, either. They were also a lot of beat writers. And I'm not seeing a lot of beat writers with a lot of the teams on the HoriZone League like I used to. There's been a lot of change in regard to the number of programs that have been in the league, out of the league. We talked about when I first came in. There was Butler. There Valparaiso came in for a time. Youngstown State, joined Loyola. They are gone. Now. So there's been a lot of change as far as the programs are concerned. But I think the one constant that they've had and something they preached a lot and they branded with the HoriZone League is being in large markets, and they continue to try to find ways to make that an advantage for them. So I'm hopefully, like Dan said earlier, you guys are like the flagship, for the HoriZone League, and you're reaching out to a different generation. Before with us, radio was big, but now you got streaming. People want to see things as much as it's even on the radio, even though you have to have radio, I think, to be able to help your brand. But you got to reach out to these people and you got to make it interesting to them and get them information. So I think what you're doing, what Dan's doing, I think are good things. And let's face it, we only have so many resources, and the resources have dwindled also. So that's something I've seen. So you have to make the best of what you got, with what you have to work with.
And just to jump off that point, you talked about only having so many resources. The podcast that we do, the Tighten Up podcast, is one of the reasons that we do it is because they no longer have radio. So I now have moved over from radio to television. It's Jeremy Otto and I doing games on TV, and there is no more radio coverage. So how else are you going to connect to your fan base if you don't have radio? I mean, there's not even a way to get your own story, your own call, your own narrative when the team is not in your building. So that's one of the other reasons that the podcast came. And so resources, very much a battle, but also to Cece's point, I mean, look, having that ability to have information right there digitally is huge. I live 2.5 hours from Callahan Hall. So being there at practice is not so easy on most days. But when I'm able to get all my information that way, that's what makes it plausible.
I totally agree, Dan. And you and Jeremy do a great job. And I just want to say this about Detroit Mercy. Ever since I've gone there and back, all these so many years and done games, they've always treated us with respect. They always have. And when my dad, he passed away back in 2014, early on, there were some ushers that worked, where they had the other teams, where you had your tickets for right behind the bench. They asked me that next year. They even asked me, they said, "Hey, where's your dad?" Because they came to the games at that time. And I thought that was so personal and a nice touch. So I just want to give a shout out to you and all the people at Detroit Mercy for being an outstanding group of people there. So I always look forward to going up there. Tell PJ I said hello.
I will. And for years, we have been, I'd say, a little too accommodating as hosts. I'm certainly hoping
Whatever
that
do
we
you
can
mean,
find a way
Dan?
to build on a little bit of success last year.
Hey, I tell you what, Coach Montgomery has done. I think I was impressed. I mean, they tightened things up, no pun intended, but also the fact that the way they played, and they had some injuries they had to deal with, and everybody has to. That's part of sports, But I have to, Bob, if you don't mind. I mean, we talked about before we went on the air. For the first time, and now this is the 29th year I've done games. I almost have no clue what to expect this year when they ask us who you think's going to finish where in the league. I don't know because these rosters have turned over, 50, 70, 80, 90, some of them 100%. Yeah, you've got information on them and how well they've done at their previous stops, and the type of talent they have. But the numbers mean nothing because let's face it, Dan and Bob, how are they going to work together as a team? Have they ever played with the other guys that they've accumulated right now on their rosters?
And to that end, I think most teams, like yourself, I think you probably knew what you were getting from Detroit Mercy over the last 5, 6 years. And now, you talked about, have these guys played with one another? Well, that's kind of the buzzword for Detroit Mercy. And I know,
Yeah.
Bob, you probably want to set this up a little bit more, but
Oh
continuity is
no, go
actually
ahead.
something
I
Detroit
already.
Mercy
I was
has.
gonna segue right into what's going on in Detroit Mercy because Detroit Mercy, and I've got to be honest, Dan, I'm not used to this. Is that there's a lot. The roster turnover was kind of at a minimum at Detroit Mercy.
Well, isn't it funny that during the Antoine Davis era, where he
Yeah.
probably was at risk of leaving after every season, he
Hmm.
only he not only came back his second year, but a third, a fourth, and a fifth year.
Yeah.
And now Orlando Lovejoy, he comes back for another year when he was very much able to go to other
Oh yeah.
programs. Now, would he have the same role at another school? That's to be decided. But now he knows that he's going to be the person who gets the biggest opportunity of anyone else. I think he is the leading returning scorer in the league. And on top of that, what was interesting is that he didn't make the first, second, or third team in the Horizon League last year. So he's also got a
However,
little
he
bit
was
of
he was on our second team.
Thank
Our
you for
second
that.
team.
Thank you for that. At least somebody appreciates it. But
We knew.
look, we live in an era where if that sort of thing happens, that is bulletin board material. It's not, I mean, I think 10, 20 years ago might not have been considered the slight that it is now, but now in this day and age and how things are looked at, that is used as fuel. And so Orlando
Sure.
Lovejoy's back, but there's a few other guys that are back as well. And these guys have some continuity, and they've also got probably the best recruiting class that they've had since I've been there. And I'm going into my 8th year.
Yeah.
And Bob, for Wright State, I've gone to some practices through the summer
Hmm.
and here lately also. This is the most turnover I've seen, in now 29 years.
Yeah.
However, they do have quite a few players back, but they're young.
Oh yeah.
There's a kid I know Campy talks about him all the time. It was Campy. It's Solomon Callahan.
Yeah.
Uh, I think he's poised to have a very, very good year, and he could be a leader, of this team. A young man who played last year, Michael Amari Bay. I think he kind of held back because everybody saw Brandon Knoll as the guy.
Of
Okay.
course.
And once the guy leaves, then maybe this other guy will be able to step up. And Michael, I think, got better as the season went on. He's a 6'7" guy. He's a grad student, very athletic. And also the recruiting class. And that's something that Coach Sargent's talked about. He's not going to get away from that, still bring in freshmen. But let's face it, he didn't say this. I'm saying this. If you can keep a guy now for a couple of years and develop
Sure.
him, you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to talk about a young man, and I know when you talk to Greg Rakestraw, he'll know. The kid from Indiana, Michael Cooper, a 6'3" point guard, combo guard from Jeffersonville.
Hmm.
His team won the Indiana State Championship, and they knocked off the previous champion who had won like 32 or 33 games in a row. And they came on and won at the Pacers Arena in front of all of these people, and the kid showed a lot of moxie. He can do a lot of good things. So they're hoping to see a lot from him. He's somebody to take a look at. Also, another kid from Fort Wayne. His name is Kellen Pickett, a 6'9". He played at a smaller school at Blackhawk Christian, but
Hmm.
he has an excellent basketball IQ. Now, I want to mention a couple of kids who've come in for transfers. Brian Itumu, he was at Merrimack, and
Hmm.
he was the defensive player of the year at Merrimack in their league. And he's from Texas, 6'7", but he has a wingspan of 7'1". And also the guard, Sam Alamutu, he's a grad student. He was on a very good Vermont team. And
Hmm.
in fact, one game late in the season, he had 21 rebounds. He is a 6'5" combo guard, about 220, so he's put together. So see what you're seeing here. This is going to be one of the more athletic teams, I think, that Wright State has going into a season. Now, we've known in the past they've always been one of the top teams in the league in offense. I
Hmm.
think I think they found out last year that you've got to be able to play some defense and also
Yeah.
you got to do and rebound. All right, so I think that's what they're focusing on at this point. Now, where's the scoring going to come from? We don't know. That's going to be a big question.
The
Solomon
question we've
Cal.
asked a couple of times on the podcast: where are
Yeah,
they getting their scoring from?
but you've got guys who have potential. Logan Woods is back. Nobody really
Yeah.
talked about him much, but he actually was the top 3-point field goal percentage leader for the team last year, not Alex Hubricks. It was Logan Woods.
Yeah.
So these guys have to step up after these other guys have left and gone on. Keaton Norris went to Samford, and then Hubricks is now with Bradley, and Brandon Knowles at Ohio State. And Dre Carter went to Fairmont State, I think, is a Division II school, an excellent program. And they're all great guys. People ask me, they say, "You feel bad if these guys leave?" And I said, "No." I'll be honest with you. I mean, Brandon Knoll, this would have been his fifth year.
Yeah.
His first 2 years, he was a medical redshirt. He
Yeah.
developed it and got better and better and better. And it's like, you know what? Reportedly, he's making a lot of money, to go to
Sure.
Ohio State. And I wish him the best. I really, really do. As well as Hubricks, great kid. I don't know what he's going to do for Bradley. I would imagine if they signed him, they're going to have him be a 3-point shooter off the bench. I'm not
Sure.
sure. But I'm just looking at this year's team. We got a kid who was a redshirter last year. His name was Alex Bruscotter, 6'8" from Shelby, Ohio. He sat out last year. I say he's 6'8", more like 6'7". But Bob, I'll tell you, and he can shoot it. He scored 53 points in a high school game. I don't care who you're playing. If you put up 53, you got some ability. But then again, how's that transpire to the Division I college basketball? I don't know.
True.
But there's also another transfer that I've been impressed with. He's from Ball State. He's from Dallas, Texas. His name is T.J. Birch. Quick hands, quick feet, excellent basketball IQ. I think he's going to be helpful. I think the guards for Wright State are going to be better because, let's face it, they were playing Ole defense for the last couple of years. I mean, guys
Yeah, a
would
little
just
bit.
yeah, and other teams would score easy. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I mean, even everybody here knows it. So, and to Coach Sargent and his staff's credit, they have gone out to try to shore that up, and I think they will. So, I think the big question, as you well know, is like who is going to step up, and be the scorer, for this team. And before how they went with the 6 to 8 guy rotation, I really believe early in the season you're going to see 9, 10 guys playing all the time
Sure.
because there's depth on this roster. And I didn't even mention Andre Holden.
Yeah.
You saw him a little bit last year. He's still got to work on some things offensively, but what I've noticed in practice, when he and Brian Atumu are on the floor at the same time, I don't care who we're playing. It'll be somebody will be lucky to get the ball up to the rim. I mean, they can jump. They're very good defensively, and they can rebound. But again, the biggest question is who's going to score.
It's an interesting reversal of fortune because the last couple of years it's been offense,
Yeah.
no defense. But this
Right.
season it's made defense will be there, but not really sure about the offense.
Yeah, so the style of play could change. I don't know. We could see probably some more, full court. We could see trying to force turnovers to get some early buckets. Like a lot of other teams in the league do. So it'll be interesting early on, especially in non-conference, to see what type of personality this team takes on. Which, from a fan standpoint and from our standpoint, it's kind of exciting.
Hey, Chris, for Wright State, in the past, there's always been a plethora of true big men. And you mentioned Pickett. I know there's 6'10" Davis as well. Do you see, right now, when you look at the roster, you see all these switchable athletic guys, Holden, 60 boards in 192 minutes, and then Atumu, 195 boards in 979 minutes, which is a great rate. 216 boards for Sam Alamatu in 800 minutes. Like, you got a bunch of guys that kind of do the same thing. Is there a place in the rotation for Pickett or Davis or some other true post player like we've gotten used to seeing from Wright State in the past?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how that transpires because I do think so. And a lot of it's going to depend on matchups, and how the guys are playing, because there's a lot of competition, for minutes right now with these guys. And Michael Amari Bay, I would think, he's the odds on favorite to be the guy, at the so-called 5, to start the season. But these other guys, they're going to play because of the different talents that they bring to the team. But you're right. In the past, they've had guys like Loudon Love who control the game. Grant Basili, those guys were great players. And even in the past with AJ Packer, ever since Brownell was here and then on to Nagy, and through Billy Donlin, they've always had a guy that they could go through at the 5 spot. And I think that's something they want. But let's face it, now you got to pay for that.
Sure. Yeah. Now, Dan, as far as you're concerned, you talked about some of the folks that that were coming back. The ones that I kind of keyed on besides Orlando Lovejoy and obviously Legend Jeter as well is coming back. But the three guys who were played got probably playing time when they just probably out of necessity last season, which is TJ Nadeau and Nate Johnson and Ryan Callambay. Um, it seems to me that them being kind of forced into action last year was kind of a blessing in disguise because now they kind of have a year of playing, or they have a year under their belt. They have some playing time that they may not have gotten had the team had been, had the team had been healthy. As far as that's concerned, do you see that? Do you see and Monty is not shy about playing freshmen, that's for sure. Do you see an opportunity for these incoming freshmen coming? Because I see some really good players coming into Detroit Mercy. Not the least of which being Lance Stone and Tyler Spratt, who I thought I was going to see last year at Cleveland State, but he redshirted.
Well, I think when those young players get put into those spots, whether it be at Detroit Mercy, at Wright State, or anywhere, I think it just allows them to learn the demands of Division I college basketball. I mean, a lot of these guys were in situations where they could have probably been a standout key player for their team right out of the gate had they decided to opt to go to D2 and or JUCO, for example, and then maybe take your shot at going into Division I basketball. But now they know the kind of work that it's going to necessitate for them to have success. So you look at Nate Johnson, Horizon League all freshman team. I mean, that was one of the best stories that we saw. And, talking about the NIL age, there were teams that were barking up that tree as well, and they were able to keep him around. But, to your point, Mark Montgomery loves freshmen, loves being able to teach, and he does have a very charismatic way about him. I mean, he connects well with just about anybody, let alone the players themselves. But he lives in a culture of development. I mean, there are transfers, but it is a deviation from the previous era. For years, Detroit Mercy would bring in a player from a Power 5 school that for whatever reason it did not work out. But it's not like that anymore. There are still transfers. I think every school is going to have those. But it's very much like Tom Izzo at Michigan State. Maybe some transfers, but he really loves development. And of course, where did Mark Montgomery come from? Michigan State. And Tom Izzo. So, it is a culture of development. But there are three in particular young players that I know that we're really, really excited about. And again, 3-star prospects. I mean, that's not going to move the needle much for some of the Power 5 schools, but Detroit Mercy got 3 of them, and they've already got people committed in the 2026 class. But
I saw
Keyshawn
that,
Fisher, who is from River Rouge, Michigan, he played his high school basketball at Callahan Hall in state championship games against Tyler Spratt, ironically enough. He ended up playing at Overtime Elite last year, and he played really well. Jaquel Cotton is another really interesting player. And by the way, all these guys I'm going to talk about all had significant Division I offers from whether it be MAC schools or maybe even in some cases a Power 5. But Jaquel Cotton really came on strong as the season went on. They're expecting a lot from him. He'll get an opportunity much like a Nadeau got last year. And then they ended up getting Mr. PSL in Lance Stone. He was actually Mr. Basketball nominee in the state of Michigan, and he was a big time name as well. So to have him, his dad is actually Lamonte Stone, who's an assistant coach at Detroit Mercy. So hey, being able to have the guy who had more assists than anyone in the history of Michigan high school basketball,
and that has got to be a
really
well-defended
cool
title,
because those 3 guys are excited about.
When you think of so many high school players from the state of Michigan who are legendary as far as point guards are concerned, and for having that guy being on your roster, I mean, that says a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the highest rated player from the state, he was the 5th best, or at least highest rated player in the state, highest rated player from the state to sign with Detroit Mercy out of high school since Ray McCallum in 2010. And of course, that spelled good things down the road for them in the future.
Sure did.
But they do have a core that's finally come together. And I like what it has in the sense of young talent and then some people at the top in the Orlando Lovejoys of the world that can help kind of bring this younger group along. So they have the now and they have the later at the same time, which is really, really something they haven't had.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Dan, when you think about Detroit this year, last year in the Horizon League, they were not very effective offensively, 11th in points per game, 11th in field goal percentage offense, but their defensive field goal percentage was great. Their reboundings were solid. What do we expect to see from this team? Do we think that the offense will be there more this year because we've got some guys with some experience, or is their style just going to be, we're going to play, that defense and see what happens? What can we expect to see on the court from Detroit Mercy this season?
So the thing about Mark Montgomery is that if for as charismatic as he is, he's also extremely self-aware, and I think that branches over to his team. And it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out, but they didn't have any three-point shooting. I mean, they not only was their percentage low, but their number of attempts were staggering low. And I also kind of appreciated that because if you know what you are, and more importantly, you know what you're not, that gives you a little bit more of a leg up. And so they just didn't really bother trying to shoot threes. They lost a guy named Jared Larry, who had played 9 really good games for them before he tore his ACL last year. They're supposing having him back to full strength, and he's going to be a very important three-point shooter for those guys. But some of the young ones that they brought in, Jaquel Cotton, Keyshawn Fisher, are expected to be able to help from that area of the floor. Lance Stone, Legend Jeter was a low-key good three-point shooter last year, and of course you've got Nate Johnson and TJ Nadu coming back. So
Purdue Fort Wayne certainly remembers Legend Jeter. Yeah, Purdue Fort Wayne certainly remembers Legend Jeter, don't they?
That was one of the most fun moments of the entire season last year. I mean, to be able to beat the preseason favorite and then to beat the team that actually went on to win the Horizon League and Robert Morris. I mean, these just weren't things that had happened in previous years. I mean, technically, there was only one time where they even won a game the year before that. So, I mean, they're working their way back into being a more competitive team and at least have the right mindset. They're trying to attack these games with defense and grit. And if you probably are well aware of, that tends to work pretty well when you're talking about the city of Detroit.
Indeed, it does. Jim, do you
have
any sorry, go ahead.
Jared Larry, he was 8 for 20 from deep last year in 9 games, so 40%. Small sample size, but that's certainly to your point, Dan, going to be added piece. You didn't mention Aiden Carter from Walsh. That's a guy that was getting to the free throw line a lot. Has great size for a guard. Can we expect him to be in that rotation, do you think, Dan? Not necessarily a great three-point shooter, but a guy that was scoring in bunches and getting to the line. What do you think there?
I have been advised not to talk about him because the coaching staff would like him to be the best kept secret in the Horizon League.
Out now.
Crap.
No, I mean, look, this is a really talented kid, and you mentioned Walsh. I mean, he was the best player on that team, and he again. There's a couple other guys in this conversation as well, but Aiden Carter's probably the most ready to jump right into kind of a similar to Jared Larry type of role. So, whether Larry's not ready, if he needs a little time to get his sea legs back, if you will, Aiden Carter is probably going to be one of those players who Mark Montgomery can just as easily snap his finger, put him into the lineup, and get what he wants. He's a really smart player. And it's one of the things that had kind of gotten away from the previous iterations of these teams. They've got a really high basketball IQ, and maybe they're not, at least up until this past recruiting class, some of the most, dynamic athletes, but they did have basketball smarts, and they're also now combining those two things. And I think that's what they're going to see when they go from 1 win to 8 wins now to whatever they end up with this season.
If anybody gives you a hard time, Dan, you just tell them Jim Cerro does the deep dive when you come on the podcast. Okay, it wasn't your fault. I had to ask.
You did your homework. I appreciate that.
I did. So.
All right. Well, that's gonna wrap it up. That's gonna wrap it up with both of you. tell us where we could thank you guys again because again, this is the best episode because all we have to do is ask a question and you guys are the best when it comes to this. So tell everybody where they can find you online.
Hey, Bob, if we just have a
Sure.
minute or two, I got a
Yeah.
question, for Dan, because Wright State doesn't have this issue, but Detroit has a history of attracting, the great young talent that it is in the city of Detroit, and now they have to share that, with Oakland. Is that the biggest thing that you have with that rivalry that you have? Is it about the recruiting issue or other issues between Oakland and Detroit Mercy?
When Mark Montgomery is an excellent question.
Yeah.
So Mark Montgomery, at his introductory press conference, said it's about time that we start bringing back kids who identify with the city of Detroit. And that is such a huge pillar of what he wants to do, not just because, hey, this is where they are and it doesn't take long to drive over and see them play high school basketball. No, no, no. It's more than that. It's about the culture. It's about the upbringing. It's about the reverence to the city and the people in it. And now, a couple of years ago, there was not a single player on the roster that actually played anywhere near Detroit going into that season. But now, Keyshawn Fisher, Detroit, Michigan. Orlando Lovejoy, Detroit, Michigan. Lance Stone, Detroit, Michigan. On top of that, you've got Legend Jeter, who was River Rouge. You've got TJ Nadeau, who's from Metro Detroit. A couple of kids from Grand Rapids, Nate Johnson, Jared Larry. They're really doing a nice job finding people. And look, nowadays in the NIL era, it is more important than ever to maximize local ties, family, friends. Being able to take advantage of those relationships now is more important than it ever has been, whether you're trying to attract people to your school or trying to leverage them reasons to stay. Case in point, Orlando Lovejoy, who literally has the area code 313 tattooed on his arm. I just personally couldn't see him playing anywhere else. So it's really good that he came back.
Dan, excellent. I'm glad I had the opportunity to ask you that because I was just curious about that because over the years I've done the HoriZone League with Wright State. I can think of some outstanding players from Detroit Mercy. A lot of respect. Willie Green, Rashad Phillips, when I first started. What outstanding players. But, I noticed you talked about the young man Lance Stone from Renaissance. I happen to know who the girls coach is at Renaissance. He happens to be Deshaun Wood, who played at Wright State.
Oh, no
That
kidding.
is wild.
And apparently they've been pretty successful the last few years.
Yeah,
So.
and Renaissance is has kind of emerged into one of the powers in the state. Lance Stone has been essentially the engine that's driven that boys basketball team for each of the last 4 years. And he's doing it in the most unselfish of ways. So many point guards want to also be their team's leading scorer. No, this dude is pass first, floor general, everything you ever want. So guys are going to love playing with him.
Sounds exciting. Appreciate it. Oh, didn't mean to get away again, Bob, but people can give me
No, you know what? That's okay. See, this is like, now I'm like, I could have just had you guys do this and
no,
you could have stayed at home.
Chris, you teed Dan up for a really important question here that you don't even realize. And that's with all these Detroit guys. How are HoriZone League fans supposed to play their annual preseason game of will random European big guy for Detroit Mercy be there or not be there on opening night? I feel like you guys have had so many random guys that you're like, I don't know. Did that guy get in a car accident again? Did that guy decide not to come home from wherever he went to? Like, I just feel like now you have people you're going to be able to rely on. And that takes a lot of fun out of
if it makes you feeling better, we got a 7-footer from Australia I can tell you about.
But is he going to be? Is he there? That's what I'm at.
Apparently he is there. He's been going to class. He has been there the whole time. Yes, he's doing a lot of homework right now.
That's awesome. Well, you can reach me on Twitter at Chris Collins 381. So
yeah, and you can find me on X. You can find me at that Dan Hasty. It's fun. We're looking forward to it. Look, my favorite time of the year is basketball season. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Again, just always a blast when we have you guys on.
Bob, Jim, thank you. Much appreciated.
fellas. Thanks. Enjoy the time.
Take care.
And we are now joined by Robb Schmidt, who does play-by-play for Youngstown State, and Brady who does play-by-play for Northern Kentucky. I believe we will also be hearing from John Nolan, who, of course, does the play-by-play for Purdue Fort Wayne. So, Robb, Brady, as always, thank you for joining us, and always enjoy having you every year on this media forum.
No, it's always enjoyable. I always look forward to this. It's always good to catch up with everybody and kind of set the table for the upcoming season.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. I'm just glad I'm still relevant to be invited. So happy to be here for sure.
Well, absolutely. Yes. Also, as we discussed, it also gives you a good opportunity to, get up to speed on your team and everybody else's team. Actually.
Yeah, I got to kind of pull up the roster. I haven't really had an opportunity to watch them a lot at practice since they've kind of come back on campus, but enough to know that they're excited here in Youngstown.
And as far as I think everybody's probably in the same case where Darren Horn's just straight up said it, right? It's a year-to-year process now. Mm-hmm. So you don't know what you have, and you certainly don't know what everybody else has. So I don't even know why they go through the whole charade of preseason rankings, because it's a whole new team for most people every year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't do your homework on transfers and kind of understand what teams' needs are. Yeah, it's very difficult. The preseason polls are very difficult, and probably it's going to be a huge hit and miss with a lot of them. I don't know if it sometimes if you're in the upper half, it kind of juices up your fan base. If you're in the bottom half, you discard it.
Wow, now's a great time to mention that we have those coming out.
Yeah.
But speaking of Northern Kentucky, Brady, I know this has kind of been, at least to us, kind of a different offseason for Darren Horn. Usually we're used to a whole group of guys coming back from 1 year to between seasons, and this actually it wasn't really the case this year, because they got hit pretty hard by both graduation and the transfer portal. So you really didn't have a lot of continuity, save for Dan Goresger and LJ Wells.
Well, you've got 9 departures, obviously, and 3 of them were due officially to expired eligibility, and then they're still holding out some sort of hope that Sam Vincent could finally get approved or end the process and just let him move on and become a professional. But they still are holding out hope. They still have a roster spot open in case there's some sort of an 11th hour, reprieve from the governor, so to speak. But I'm not even considering him as part of this group. It's unfortunate that, with all of the free eligibility that's been handed out over the course of the last handful of years, that they couldn't somehow find a way for Sam Vincent to be found eligible, for playing an extra game or two. My suggestion and my advice, which nobody's going to take, was from the beginning, is for Sam to hire a lawyer and threaten to sue the NCAA. And I promise you, he would have got whatever he wanted. Unfortunately, Northern Kentucky did not choose to go that route. They chose to go the route of petitioning the NCAA from a time frame that is now antiquated, and they're still waiting on a final answer. He was denied at one point, but now I guess it's through some sort of a multiple appeals process. But man, it's we've already started practice. We're into the month of October. I mean, at this point, I'm a big wrestling fan. Jim Cornette always makes the statement that when you're at this point in the game, you're just smoking the hopium. And that's kind of where they're at with Sam. And I wouldn't consider him a returner. But with that said, I would think 2 returning starters in the year 2025, 26 is very excellent retention at this point in time. So if you got two returning starters coming back, I think that's a great thing. But they have been able to retain guys definitely on a higher level up until now. But I think two's pretty good at this point. So I'll take that as a small victory.
Now, not to lean into the hopium as you call it, but this is the NCAA dragging its feet on eligibility is not unprecedented even in the HoriZone League. As you remember, was a couple of years back. It took them a while to allow oh crud. What's his name from Wright State? And Chris is gonna kill me because he was actually on last year. Tanner Holden. It took forever for Tanner Holden. They did Tanner Holden didn't get his eligibility until preview week in 2023, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So, it just is what it is, man. The NCAA works in very mysterious ways. So just keep in mind when people want to just make blanket statements about there's no more rules, there's plenty of rules for the mid-majors because quite frankly,
absolutely.
they can get pushed around. And that's what the NCAA has specialized in doing is pushing people around. They just can't do that anymore with the high major conferences. And that's where you see the lack of rules. But that does not completely trickle down to the mid-major levels. And that's where we live, guys. That's the reality of it. So, you're still going to have your you can complain about the system and how you got a whole new team every year and how that's part of this new framework of college athletics. It's just it's still the haves and the have-nots, at this point, and you just got to, know what pool you're swimming in and just accept it and adjust to it instead of complain about it or wish for, days gone by. And that's what I got to remind, people who follow me that all the time. Because, they don't like it the way it is. But if you concentrate all your time in not liking the current system, then you don't have to be a part of it. There's no rule that says you're forced to do this.
Correct.
Because at the end of the day, this stuff's supposed to be fun, right? Why would you want to be miserable on purpose? Why would you hate watch this or hate follow it? So just look at the positivity and enjoy the ride, whichever ride that takes you.
Did you all hear that? Our Twitter followers, that last statement, exactly that.
Exactly. And I get it, man. We all like to be mad. That's kind of the outraged society we live in. And it's kind of always kind of been that way. But of course, it just seems for people to feel like it's more therapeutic.
Is a thing, man.
Yeah, it is. And we see it in every form of life, even in the stuff that's not supposed to be fun, but come on, man. When the umpire, says to begin the game, he says play ball, not work ball.
Yeah,
I always got to remind people of that, including myself. Sometimes.
You are absolutely correct. You are absolutely correct. Now, Rob, the having one or two returning players has kind of been the system that has been used, and then working the portal has kind of been the system that has been used pretty consistently at Youngstown State, starting with Jared Calhoun, then moving now into Ethan Faulkner in his second year. Just thinking of the two guys that we've seen from last year, Jason Nelson and Chris Carroll. Yep. And I think those two guys, especially Chris Carroll, I liked his game last year, and I think Chris Carroll especially, even with all these new guys coming in, is going to be pivotal to what Youngstown State does this year.
Yeah, with those two, there were two other that returned. One was a red shirt, Rashid Shibo from last year. He red shirted, kid from Chicago. They like his body. We'll see how he adapts as a redshirt freshman. And then the one guy that came from Brady's land, our guy Emmanuel Zorgful returns. He had suffered a lower leg injury before the season ever started last year and redshirted. So I-Man is back. So that gives us a little bit of a rim protector inside. So pretty fortunate to have all four of those back. And as you mentioned, two of them are starters. Jason Nelson will run the point. I put Chris Carroll on the preseason first team.
As did I.
I just think at this stage with people that can do multiple things, I think Chris fits in there, and I slotted him in the first team preseason.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny because I've been joking all season. Like, yeah, what team has a 7-footer on their roster, and then the next season when that 7-footer leaves, another one comes back. And if memory serves correct, I think Ethan Faulkner did mention that Zorkval is 100% now, and once he gets kind of reacclimated since he's been out for a while in
Yeah.
live game action. There are definitely going to be some opportunities, not to necessarily replace a guy like Gabe Dines, but definitely be at least somewhat of a factor that Dines was.
Yeah, and I think obviously Gabe was a gifted shot blocker in this league, and then went to USC and did very well for himself in the NIL world. And with I-Man, might not be the type of shot blocker that just has that sense and that timing, but he'll be a definite rim protector. He's a little more athletic than Gabe, in all honesty. He's done a really good job in rehab and building his body up. He looks a lot different than he first came to the college ranks, and I think he shoots it a little bit better. Gabe was a guy that really dominated around the rim. I think I-Man might have a little bit more range. We'll see how that plays out if they even give him the freedom to do that. But it's nice to have one of those guys you can call upon when you got to have a defensive stance. And they brought in some solid defenders. Tyler Robinette, who's learned how to win at the College of Idaho. They're coming off a national championship, and one of the kids they took out of the portal from UT Martin, Vlad Solarizde. I think they're excited about him. If you look at some publications and different things on Twitter, they feel maybe he's a preseason first team in his own right. And then the kid that come from Houston Christian, Bryson Dawkins, he could play free safety on our football team. So he's a specimen. I think he can get to the rim. I think they're happy with the way they shoot the ball this year. Last year, early on, YSU had some struggles offensively. You get beat by 25 by Presbyterian, and you only score 42 points. Through the first 7 games last year, they struggled shooting the ball. I think they went out and rectified that problem this year. So I'm anxious to see, once the scrimmages start in the next couple of weeks, to see how that all plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Brady, one of the trends I've seen in the Darren Horn era, especially in the last few years, with Northern Kentucky's roster, is taking a good look at the non-Division I ranks. It started with Xavier Rhodes and went to Michael Bradley, and then last year you had Josh Schilling and Dan Goretzker. Now you got you have 3 non-D1 guys coming in. It seems like if this is working, let's do a little bit more year over year.
Yeah, and that was usually a need at the point guard position, which is not the route he's gone this year. There's actually 4 transfers that are coming in from the lower than Division I level, and
I must have missed the 4th one.
So Donovan O'Day is the only Division I transfer. He is from Cal State Fullerton. They expect him to play a lot. Actually, so if you just go through let's just face it, Darren's going to play 7 or 8. That's going to be his rotation. So you've got LJ Wells and Dan Goretzker as obvious choices, right? Then O'Day out of Cal State Fullerton would be a perimeter guy. Another guy from Barton College, which is Division II, a guy named Sean Nelson. He's super high on him. The way he feels about Sean Nelson is he brings a physicality to the perimeter that NKU has lacked in the last handful of years. He hasn't said this, but what I've seen and what little bit I've witnessed is he reminds me, only in the part of the physicality on the perimeter that Coach Horn is stressing, is a guy that NKU hasn't had since Trayvon Faulkner, which has been a handful of years ago. Another guy that's coming in is Cale Robinson, another well-traveled Division II guy. This is his 4th school. Last year, he was at Montana State Billings, originally from New Zealand. He's a graduate player. He somehow was able to gain an extra year of eligibility, but he applied to it on the NAIA level, where the rule book is a lot less, it's a lot thinner, if you stack the pages up, and then was able to parlay that into transferring in to the NCAA ranks. And so Cale Robinson, kind of a 6'7", He'll provide depth, probably be more of a bench piece. Another guy who I'm really interested in is Tay Dozier. I've seen him play a lot. He's from Georgetown College, an NAIA powerhouse. They go to what they call the Sweet 16 or whatever, what we would call it, is their national tournament when it comes down to, they say, like the Final Four. Their 16 teams go to Kansas City, and Georgetown College is a perennial participant in that, not far away from here, right around the Lexington, Kentucky area where Georgetown is located. He's a Kentucky kid from Louisville, Kentucky. Really excited. I saw him play a lot when Thomas More was in the Mid-South Conference in NAIA, and Tay Dozier came in. Excited to see him. And a fourth guy that is a newcomer as far as a not Division I player, and I think he'll be another bench piece, is a guy by the name of Addison Archer, who's actually a junior college transfer out of Ranger Junior College. He's another guy that provides some length on the perimeter as well, probably be more of a forward. I don't see Darren as having a very big team. You lose that guy in the middle, Keanu Tijere, as he transferred to Rhode Island. They really swung and miss on some other bigs, and they do have a developmental big guy coming from Spain as a freshman, and his situation is he, along with another guy named Ethan Elliott, were not able to get into the country until school started because of visas and all of the immigration talk that was going on, not only in athletics but in our country, where it's not as easy to get international players into the country as it was in the past. So those guys could not even get into the country until August. And so they were not part of any of the preseason stuff until school started. But Ruiz, I don't think he's Ioana Ruiz is the best I can pronounce his name at this point. But he's going to be more of a project, a 7-footer. They're hoping he's more skilled than Paulus Rapolis, who departed the program and went back home to Russia. And but good,
because I was trying to figure out where he went, because I've been looking through because he's on our transfer tracker, and I'm like, where did he's like one of those guys I'm like trying to figure out where he went.
He went back home is what he did, and he's going to try his hand professionally. And again, it's interesting, the international professional levels, you can get eligible in the United States with the NCAA, as is Ethan Elliott, right? That's why the whole Sam Vincent thing is so perturbing, but whatever, it is what it is. We won't beat that up anymore. But Ethan Elliott's a guy they're really high on. He's from Australia. He has what is described as semi-pro experience, but he's coming in as a freshman. He's a little bit older, but he's a guy they are super excited about. I just don't know how quickly he will get into the mix in the beginning because of the fact that he did not have any of that off-season practicing and conditioning with the team. He's coming late to the dance, but I would think at some point they would be happy, meaning the coaching staff, to have Elliott be the point guard and have Dan Goresger play off the ball and use his scoring ability. But you have two legitimate point guard threats in Goresger and Elliott. At this point, you really don't know how quickly Elliott is going to develop into that role.
Yeah, you mentioned the pro thing, and I've been making this joke all off season that Jonathan Levy from Green Bay crawled so everybody else could walk this season.
I mean, it's interesting how that works and how the process of eligibility is a thing. And and if you can find a guy and get him eligible at this point in college athletics, I tip my cap to you, especially a guy like a Green Bay, a team that was super, super struggling all season long. And they literally find a guy more or less off the street and are able to insert him into their lineup and make them better. I mean, it's kudos to them. Right. And it worked. And it obviously was on the up and up NCAA wise. Instead of being mad about it, man, just, think about that when you need to get a guy eligible, because talk about the waiver wire. I mean, that's essentially a waiver wire pickup, and it helped their team. I mean, they, of course, didn't, turn it into wins until very late in the season. But I think Green Bay is going to be a sleeping giant. I know a lot of people laugh at Doug Gottlieb, and he puts himself in a position to be laughed at. But man, I know our staff was very concerned about whether they would have to play Green Bay in the postseason last year.
Well, good news to Green Bay fans, we didn't pick them last, so we didn't do that this year. Because you are correct, but as far as Rob, one last thing before we go,
Sure.
I know that we've talked over the years about your situation. You're on campus. You're probably on the YSU campus more than some of the other play-by-play guys, and so you've kind of had a more of a broader experience with the university in general, especially the football team that took Sandy. I almost called them San Diego State, South Dakota State. I should know who South Dakota State is, because they're really good at football and pretty good at basketball too.
Had them last night. We had them here last night in front of about 12,000 people, and good turnout. And the guys played well. We went up early, 14-0. Led by 10 at half, and just kind of got overpowered a little bit at certain stages in the second half. But they've made remarkable progress, and it's been fortunate for me, like you had mentioned, to be involved here in the athletic department at Youngstown State. And I oftentimes have an opportunity, as Ethan Faulkner and the staff include me with recruit visits. So when there's a recruit coming to campus, I have an opportunity to kind of meet them, welcome them to Youngstown, and always kind of tell them the importance of being here and trying to get to the NCAA tournament for the first time. And so I see them on a regular basis. It's fun because you start to learn little idiosyncrasies, like a newcomer in Cam Pollock and Rich Rolfe, who transferred here from Charlotte, and Pollock came here from Cal PA. Those are two guys that are going to shoot a lot and shoot it very well. And you start to meet these guys and see them on a regular basis, and not just on the bus when you're traveling, but it's nice to see them on a campus aspect. And we had a lot of guys come back this off season. A lot of the guys that played here, as Brady knows, like Adrian Nelson came back, and we've had Brandon Rush come back this summer, and guys all the way back to Kendrick Perry. So it's nice that they stay in touch with the program, and then I get a chance to kind of see them. I think that's what kind of builds your excitement for the upcoming year. So I think that's really what I'm looking forward to, is kind of seeing these guys a little bit more in action.
Sure. And then Brady, and I know I'm going to bring this up with Greg Rakestraw later, because I know he's very heavily involved, not just with IU Indy sports, but the broader Indianapolis area sports landscapes, specifically on the high school end. I know you've done I know your experience is has as an announcer has been not just NKU but the region in general. And when you look at kind of what you've done over the years, I do appreciate, and I'm going to say this to Greg too, I do appreciate the knowledge, the regional knowledge, if you will, of some of the players who are coming in to a place like NKU from one of those area schools. And I do like I do appreciate the fact that you do have just such a wealth of knowledge as far as that region is concerned.
Well, I appreciate that, and a big part of that is because how important, and of course, for those who don't know, Northern Kentucky University is just in the shadows of Cincinnati, Ohio.
Yep.
So it is a strong high school sports base, right? I mean, Friday nights in the fall are so important, so you see a lot of guys, as high school players develop into collegiate players and then pros. I mean, I was sideline reporting last night for Thomas More football, and there's a kid randomly from Middletown High School, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the opposing team, Lake Erie College. And of course, that gives me that, hey man, Middletown, great season this year. They're 6-1. It's their first guaranteed winning season since I think it was 2011, when a guy like Jalen Marshall was their quarterback, and another dude, one of their linebackers that was pretty solid, was Kyle Schwarber. Right.
Sure.
I mean, just to be able to cover those people and guys like that I could go on for hours and hours and hours and say, you might think of him as this big home run hitter, in Major League Baseball. And my first impression of him is this stocky little linebacker that was a step slow with a bad knee in high school, and the guy just made plays, and
Sure.
so I like to translate that to people because, especially in the greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky area, that stuff is important to them.
Yeah,
You can't
absolutely.
just live in the moment, be a prisoner of the moment, because you can say, and I screw this up a lot, man. I'll refer to somebody as their dad, right? Because that was somebody that I either was a teammate of or played against, and now their kid is playing and I'm covering them. And it's just because
Sure.
people get a kick out of that. They're like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, man, I remember that dude. Another guy, a guy my age, a guy named Jack Jennings, right? He was the Charles Barkley of his time, playing high school basketball for Holmes High School. And he eventually became teammates with Darren Horn at Western Kentucky University, right? And
Okay.
part of why I've tried to, schmoozing with Darren is that connection, right? I was like,
Yeah.
hey, man, you played with Jack Jennings. And then Jack was always referred to as Bingo. He was a guy that was a low post guy. And every time he'd hit one of those spots, he'd shout bingo. And that just became his name. And so just to be able to kind of, I guess, bond with him about those kind of things, to kind of let him know, man, that I'm paying attention. I might not know X's and O's. That's what my analyst is for. I set that person up to tell you why it happened. I'm just trying to describe how it happened. And in the interval, you're a storyteller, right? In radio, you are painting a picture. So you're constantly talking about the action. On television, guess what? It's video. You can watch it. You know what's going on. And if I misspeak about whether a guy dribbled with his left or his right hand, well, I'm not going to put myself in that spot, because I'm going to talk about other buffoonery as far as, who that guy's dad is and how I know him personally. And that sometimes gets you in trouble too as well. But hey, it's the acquired taste. And I feel like that I've learned a long time ago, because I've always liked listening to old timers tell those old stories. And now that I'm an old timer, I guess I'm kind of doing what I enjoyed listening to as a kid, and hoping that gets just a small bit of joy from the audience. And it sounds like Bob, you've at least figured that out just a tiny bit, because it's also a cover up for not knowing as much about what you're actually watching, because didn't play it at a high level, right? Coaches will sniff you out if you try to pretend like you know shit that you don't know. And they love to capitalize on letting you know that. And that's how I kind of try to back off of those, potentially, uneasy interactions, by just kind of going another route.
All right. Well, guys, unfortunately, John was not able to join us today, because I really wanted to talk to him about his experience with the Fever this season. But I guess we'll have to do that for another episode. But Brady, Robb, as always, thank you guys for coming on. And as I told everybody else before, and I'm going to tell Greg, you guys, this is the episode where you guys make our job so easy, so easy. So tell us where everybody can find you guys online.
Well, I guess I'll start first. You can find me on Twitter at Brady Labor 1. It's real easy. I don't post probably as much as I should as far as self-promotion or whatever, but I try to repost whatever NKU stuff as far as when our broadcast is and where you can find it, and then repost anything else as far as what Northern Kentucky athletics, especially a men's basketball program, will put out there. So I'm just more of a helping hand. I've kind of got out of the business of trying to entertain people on social media, because at some point you people don't take a joke as well, and they might try to cancel you, and I ain't got a whole lot to lose, so I can't lose what little bit I have, so I kind of refrain from that sport nowadays.
Good call.
And then on Twitter for me, it's at YSU_Robb with 2 B's. Much like Brady, you're trying to support the programs here. I do that at Youngstown State. So a lot of stuff you're either liking, retweeting, just trying to promote, we're trying to promote ticket sales and, interest in the program. And things that help publicize it a lot more. I don't necessarily do a lot of my own viewpoints. I'm a little bit more supportive online. But yeah, if you like, it's at YSU_Robb with 2 B's.
All right, great. Well, thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate it.
No, thanks, Bob. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Love doing it.
All right, so I am now joined by Greg Rakestraw. Greg, thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate you having on once again.
Of course, my pleasure. Happy to do it.
So now I understand that IU Indy now has a new radio play-by-play voice. Am I correct in assuming that? I thought I saw something about that.
Correct. So they're going to be back on the radio for the first time in a handful of years, which is great. They're going to be on 1430 The Ticket in Indianapolis, which is the CBS Sports / Odyssey affiliate. And so Jimmy Cook will be doing that. So I will stay on ESPN Plus, and I know there's a look from IU Indy to potentially look at some television dates in terms of the market as well.
Nice.
This is the third year that Luke Basso has been the director of athletics at IU Indy, and he has been great about going out and securing more sponsors, more donors, and then looking to then extend the market reach. And Bob, let's face it, we're now almost right at a year away from a brand new arena finally being open on campus. And so
nice. Yes.
Expanding the media branding of IU Indy is clearly a key part of this over the next 12 months.
Yeah. The gym. I'm actually looking forward to seeing that. I'm looking forward to seeing the gym. The James Morris Arena for those of you who are scoring at home. We're just going to take the call at the gym.
And for those that don't know who Jim Morris is, Jim was a big proponent of IU Indy athletics, but Jim worked for the Indiana Pacers. Jim was part of the Indiana Sports Corp. There is this kind of golden generation of city planners that really turned Indianapolis from a Rust Belt town and from a place the folks from Chicago called Indiano Place in the 70s and early 80s into, really kind of turning Indianapolis into a sports hub.
Sure.
Obviously, on Wednesday of this week, Lucas Oil Stadium played host to Horizon League Media Day because that's where the Final Four is going to be played in 2026. And frankly, the women's Final Four is heading there in 2028, and men are coming back in 2029.
They are.
And Jim was part of the group that kind of really kind of got that ball rolling. So when he passed, and this was, this arena was in the works already by that point in time, then, he was the perfect person to name it after.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be refresh my memory on the capacity. It's going to be what 4,000, 40,000, 4,500 seats, something like that.
I believe in that vicinity. And frankly, that's what's needed. Obviously we played at the Coliseum where the conference tournament is held. Played there as our primary venue for right at 10 years. Played a couple of games back there last year. We'll play just one game there this year. Everything else is back on campus, trying to rejuvenate students. Hey, come see a ball game, and you can walk from your apartment dorm, use your usual campus parking, to be a part of that. But with the variety of venues that are now in the market, Gamebridge obviously seats 18,000.
Sure.
You've got the Corteva Coliseum that seats about 7,000. You got the Fishers Event Center that seats about 8,000 on the northeast side of town. You didn't need anything massive. You needed something that really fit the needs of IU Indy, and having something to the tune of 4,000 to 4,500 is perfect for us.
Oh, let's not forget that new arena in Noblesville, where the Noblesville Boom, formerly the Fort Wayne Mad Ants, are going to are at.
Correct. The Arena Innovation Mile, and that seats 3,500. So there's so many venues in town, I even forgot one of them.
Butler doesn't count. That's their home arena. And everybody's heard of historic Hinkle Fieldhouse already.
Absolutely.
Now, one of the other things that you have done is the weekly Horizon League show, and kind of I can't remember if we had talked about that in previously, but for those who may not have heard heard the weekly show, and I know it was on like Wednesday evenings, give us a summary of kind of what that what that's about, and kind of if that's going to be something we get to see this season.
Correct. That'll continue. It looks like we're going to do 9 of them this year is the plan. Do a
Great.
couple of those in December to kind of coincide with the first run of conference play, then come back after the first of the year and do several of those. And frankly, always the last one is going to be the Monday night of the conference. We are live in the fan zone right as games are about to tip off at 7:00. We go on live on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan from 6 until 7. And the whole impetus and idea, this will be the third year that we have done this. The whole impetus and idea behind it was to give people in Indianapolis more of a taste of what else is happening around the league. Now, obviously, we will talk about IU Indianapolis or Purdue Fort Wayne, but really it's trying to introduce the Indianapolis market. Hey, this is how good Green Bay women's basketball has been, or Cleveland State women's basketball has been, or these are the great players, the great coaches, whether it's, Greg Campy, Darren Horn, Bart Lundy, whatever the case may be. One of my favorite interviews in the 2 years of the show was Sonny Wicks 2 years ago from Green Bay. I'm like,
man, he is everybody's
this guy's a star, and right, and is obviously heading that direction. So, it's a 45-minute to an hour-long show. Normally, there's 2 coaches and at least a player on the program each week. But the first one of those for this year will be the first week in December.
Perfect. It's funny you mentioned Sonny, because Kyle Rossi mentioned him on Twitter yesterday during the forum, during media day, and Sonny replied back to him. He made a juice reference. So, and as of course, bring your own juice.
So absolutely, Sonny's got that on lockdown.
He does, absolutely, without a doubt. He was actually, I live in the Akron area. He was actually at an Akron game. I did not know this, and had I known it, I'd probably even say, hey, Sonny. Anyway. But yeah, let's talk about IU Indy, because I'm sure that the team that you thought we were going to see is different from the team we're actually going to see this season.
Right. Yeah, I mean, obviously things went haywire at the end of last year, and not when on the court standpoint, but kind of after the season ended.
Yeah.
With the exit of Paul Casaro, with the introduction of Ben Hallett. But I would say this, for as disappointing as it is that Paul's time at IU Indy was 1 year, and even though it was a 10-win team and a lot of building blocks were coming back, Ben plays such a unique and exciting style. And to be blunt, Ben was very much in the potential decision to be the head coach when Paul got the job a year earlier.
That was my understanding.
And so the fact that Ben was still interested and wanted to make the jump and wanted to come here was good to see. There's a lot of players, and frankly, to a certain degree, he is going to follow Paul's blueprint in terms of bring guys that know you and know your system with you. And so IU Indy had success last year, basically with former University of Indianapolis players and other assembled Division II All-Stars. Well, that's exactly what Ben is doing, because he's bringing guys like J.P. Dragus and Finley Woodward and Tyler DiAgostino and Cameron Tinsley that all played for him at West Liberty. And then he's going out and getting other Division II players that he has seen or played against, like Corey Boston, who played at a conference rival in Concord, Svetkovic, a young man from Serbia that played at Virginia Wise. He's got another one in terms of Aiden Miller that played at Point Park, which is a new Division II, which was NAI in Pittsburgh. However, what he was able to do was keep players that were either recruited by Paul or were going to transfer into play for Paul. Those kids that are local stayed. So, for example, Jackson Edwards, who I think is the perfect point man on Ben's press from Cathedral, that went from Murray State to Valpo to St. Bonaventure to IU Indy. Jackson is back home. He was part of a state championship team now 3.5 years ago at Cathedral High School. He can really play. Micah Davis was an Indiana All-Star 2 years ago, playing for a former then IUPUI guard in Adrian Moss. He was at Eastern Kentucky for a year and has transferred home. And the other player that decided to stay is McGuire Mitchell, who was from Zionsville, which is the northwest suburbs of Indianapolis. I covered a bunch of his games the last couple of years. He can really play, and he's kind of got the body and the build, and from a shooting standpoint, fits the mold of what Ben's teams want to do. So it is a complete roster overhaul. There is one player that stuck it out, and AJ Holobar, who transferred from UIndy to IUindy when Paul made the move. AJ may have a chance to crack the rotation, but other than that, it's all new players. But I still think there is very much a sense of excitement about what this program can be under Ben Hallett.
And I know that we've talked about this in episodes past. It's ironic that Ben Hallett was in the mix before Paul Corsaro eventually got the job. That seemed to be a habit in the HoriZone League, because if memory serves correct, Robb Summers was in the mix for the Cleveland State job after Dennis Gates went to Mizzou, and it eventually went to Danielle Robinson. I guess the old adage is true. If first you don't succeed, try again.
Well, I know Luke wanted to make the hire quickly, knowing he had to make the move in the spring. I kind of think it was a one-man recruiting process. Ben, do you want the job? Yes, great. You're hired. Get here and let's go. And so it was a pretty quick flip from the IU Indianapolis perspective.
Also forgot about Doug Gottlieb, because he was in the mix until Sonny got the. I knew he was in the mix. It's like, it must be a HoriZone League thing. But I think one of the things that struck me about the transition from Paul Corsaro to Ben Hallett, you mentioned obviously the fact that when Ben Hallett was hired, he had a very, very short window to get who he needed in, and I was blown away by how quickly he was able to get almost a completely new roster put together just in time for summer workouts. And I think that, to me at least, that's kind of a testament to not only the players that he brought in that seemed to be, he had 4 of them that said, we're coming with you, coach, but also the ability to keep guys like Micah Davis and Jackson Edwards, who had committed to Paul Corsaro, recommit to the Ben Hallett system.
Correct. And again, I think part of it is it's such an intriguing style to play. It is so different. It gives you so much freedom. I think it's an easy style to recruit to. I think any coach is well served when they make a move to bring guys with them that know exactly what to expect. But there's not exactly a lack of talent in the local area that Ben can tap into. And again, he's now done that with 3 kids that weren't originally recruited by him, but kind of saw and saw how things played out and will develop in this system. And now I'm curious kind of then what Ben taps into for next year. Sure. By our own very lofty standards in the state of Indiana, the senior class that is about to tip off their season in a month or so is not as deep as the ones that have come through for the most part over the last several years. 2 of the last 3 years have been somewhat down. And I say that with having a guy like the lead player of this class is Luke Ertl, who will likely go to Purdue and start next year. The lead player in the class 2 years ago was Flory Badunga, who was a rotational piece at Kansas. But those constitute down classes over the course of the years, because the talent coming through here has been so good. So in other words, if you can pick a transfer or 2, and you can pick a kid or 2 that you think fits your system from Central Indiana, from the state of Indiana, you can be successful here. And that's why, again, I think there's a lot of positive thoughts about what Ben might be able to do here in Indianapolis.
And I think one of the other things that helps him as well, because when we had him on the podcast, he was very committed, and he hadn't gotten his staff together yet. He was very committed to not only having guys who knew his system, but also those assistants who would have some deep knowledge of the region and the way Indiana high school basketball kind of works. And from what I can tell, he did an outstanding job. He brought in John Peckinpah and Devin Heath Granger. Both of these guys, have very deep local roots. Also helps that, and I joke with him on the live podcast, what we did, YouTube show we did, that all of these guys, I think with the exception of like one guy, were guys who were connected to the Mountain East Conference, which of course is where West Liberty is.
Correct. So Peckinpah is the overlapping circle of that group.
Yes.
And Devin's Lawrence Central product, great guy. But Peckinpah is the overlap there. So here's the story. John Peckinpah played at what is now Purdue Fort Wayne, played for Dane Fife at IPFW. John is from a wonderful coaching family. I referenced Flory Badunga. John was his high school coach at Kokomo. I think John was very content to be a high school coach. While John coached the boys at Kokomo, his wife is still the girls coach at Kokomo High School. But John came back to Indiana after being the head coach at what was then Wheeling Jesuit, which literally is down the road from West Liberty. So he knew Ben from West Liberty. When Ben took the job, he reached out to Peck and said, all right, you want to get back into college coaching? And apparently John was kind of wanting to scratch that itch. So now you've got a guy. So John's uncle, Rick, is now retired, but won over 500 games at McCutcheon High School. And if you know the Indiana roster from about 4 or 5 years ago, his star player was Robert Finnessy, that was on their state runner-up team to Romeo Langford in New Albany 9 years ago. John's dad, who sadly just passed away in the last year or so, was kind of his assistant coach. But the Peckinpah name is very well known in the state of Indiana. So John is well known in the state of Indiana. So anything that Ben kind of lacks in knowing high school coaches from this state, John is the guy that covers it. So John knows Ben's system. John knows Indiana. It's a perfect marriage.
I always got to bring up that I know when John Peckinpah left Wheeling Jesuit, he was replaced by Will Ryan, and well, we know where Will Ryan went afterwards. But one of the before I let you go, there is one other thing I wanted. I'm sure I've made mention of this before in the past, because I know anytime that I listen into one of your broadcasts, one of the things that I really enjoy with both you and Bob Lovell on the calls is just your expertise in Indiana Indiana high school basketball, and just the different players and the different schools, and the different coaches. It really kind of lends itself to a lot of really, for somebody who knows absolutely nothing about any of those things. I truly do appreciate that.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. And for those that don't know Bob's story, Bob was the head coach and AD in the NAIA days at IUPUI. So he was there from 82 through 94. He then got out of coaching. And since that time, this is his 32nd year of doing a statewide Friday night and Saturday night sports talk show. He's the scoreboard show across the state of Indiana. His show has 40-something affiliates across the state. For a while Bob was doing that, he also was the director of basketball operations for the HoriZone League. Now, this goes back 15 to 20 years at this point.
Sure.
So this was kind of in part of the Butler heyday. Bob was kind of overseeing. He was kind of the right-hand man of John LeCrone, the previous commissioner of the HoriZone League, before Julie Rowe Lash. But Bob, much like John Peckinpah, knows every high school coach in the state. Bob and I have hosted the pairing show together for the high school basketball state tournament for the better part of the last decade. And when I'm not calling IU Indy games, I will probably end up calling about 70 to 75 high school basketball games in the state of Indiana this year. So between the two of us, we know Indiana high school hoops just a little bit. And I know that bleeds into the broadcast. So to hear someone say that they're not from River, they appreciate that. that's good news for me. I appreciate hearing that, Bob. Thank
Sure,
you.
no problem. And by the way, I'd be in an active shameless self promotion for us. We actually do have on HoriZoneRoundtable.com, because Chris Schumer did a story on
Yep.
Bob Lovell for Metro's Day back in
Right.
January. I had to think about that for a little bit. It's been a while.
Right. Retro.
So,
I would love to see that become an annual thing
sure.
because IUPUI were the Metros until they went Division One in '98. And
Yeah.
they became the Jaguars, one of three sets of Jaguars, joining Southern and South Alabama. That's it. That's part of the reason why I
Yep.
went with the Jags instead. So now they've got history in both. But I love rocking the Metros gear one day a year.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say this. I do. One of our former writers did have a picture of the Metro's mascot. Please leave the mascot in the closet. That mascot scares me. But Greg,
I've never even seen the Metro mascots. Now I got to see a picture of this. This is good.
oh, we got it on. Yeah, Jonathan Barnes wrote a story about it last year, and I'm like, yeah. He made fun of me for years about for a year about that. So, but Greg, thank you very much again for coming on. Tell everybody where you can find you online.
Very simple. Greg Rakestraw on Twitter/X is the best thing to do. And again, if like Bob, you're an outsider to Indiana, but you love Indiana high school sports, iscsportsnetwork.com is where you can find most of my work. When I'm not doing things with the Horizon League or IU Indy or like the Indy 11, then you can go find me at ESPN Plus when that's the case.
All right. All right. Well, thank you very much, Greg. And this actually wraps up for this episode, which was huge. Hopefully you guys, but as always, HoriZonRoundtable.com, as we mentioned, all of our articles, all our previous podcast episodes. You can find us where podcasts are available, and you can find us on your Amazon Google devices. So tune in next week. We're doing our post-preview week recap, which may span 1 or a million episodes. I don't know. We'll find out then. But until then, thank you guys for listening.